Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Thrive in 2024-2025 webinar series, where we have been providing you with simple and effective strategies to build stronger relationships and achieve professional and personal growth. I apologize if I'm a little hard to hear. I have a cold, so my voice is a little raspy, but my name is Nicole Cousineau. I am the program coordinator with the Buckeye Wellness team in the Office of the Chief Wellness Officer. Before we get started with our presentation today, a couple of items. The first one being this session is being recorded. I'm sure you saw that pop up. So if you need to pop out a little early or want to view it again at a later date, you will be able to do so. Please use the chat and Q&A feature for any questions and comments. With any time at the end, we'll get to them. And if not, I'm sure our speaker here will be happy to take some questions in an email. And at the end of the session, when you hop off, there will be an evaluation that pops up. So please make sure you take a few minutes to fill that out. And lastly, in the reminder email that went out through Zoom, there was a link to a couple of handouts that will be mentioned today. So you all receive that then. Once I am done with my spiel and introducing our wonderful speaker, I will also put that link in the chat. So it'll be fresh in your memory if you already had that email get buried in your inbox. But I will now move on and introduce our speaker today. We are joined by Dr. Scott Graham, an assistant professor of clinical practice with the College of Nursing and the OSU Center for Healthcare Innovation and Leadership. His presentation is titled How to Be More Engaged in Your Work, where he will provide us with practical skills you can use in our workplace to become more engaged and productive. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Scott Graham.
Thanks, Nicole. Thanks. Welcome, everyone. I will just tell you a couple things right off the bat. I'm probably going to be terrible at looking at the chat because we only have 30 minutes now, 28 minutes. So as Nicole said, please feel free to email me. You probably have my email. If not, it'll be in the PowerPoint slides that'll be sent to you right on the first page, which I'll show you here shortly. And I honestly mean that. Feel free to email me with any specific questions you have. When we have a crowd this large, it's really hard to specifically answer all of your needs and wants and desires for answers to some of the questions you have. So please, I mean this, feel free to email me directly after the presentation anytime you have a chance. And we'll find a way to respond to your questions and maybe share some thoughts and advice that might be helpful to you. I have taught leadership and team development for many, many decades now. And so I'm hoping that what I share with you today is very useful to you. Whenever I do a presentation, whether it's 10 people or 10,000 people, I tell them just find in all of this, just find one thing that you will start doing, stop doing, or perhaps change how you do it that makes a positive difference in your life and or the lives of those who you have influence over. And so that's my dream, my hope for you is you just find one thing in here, okay? So look for that one choice golden nugget morsel of goodness that's helpful to you. So I've pulled from various sources, but I'm going to share with you a lot in a short amount of time. So don't feel overwhelmed. I know it's easier said than done, but there's just a lot of information here. But I've tried to pick and choose some of the things that I think would be most useful to you. So let me start by sharing my screen. And Nicole, you tell me if you see the screen.
Yes, it looks
Okay.
perfect.
Okay. So anytime I discuss and share information about workplace engagement, how to be more connected and passionate about what you're doing and where you're doing it, I always tie it and marry it to the topic of focusing on what your strengths are, what the things that you do well, how do you do them, how do you bring more of those to the workplace? Okay. So that's critical to be more engaged is to identify what are your strengths and to bring more of those into the workplace. So let's see. Here we go. I mentioned I've been teaching leadership a long time. This is a definition of leadership. And one of the misnomers about leadership is it's only for the chosen few who have the title or the position. And one of the reasons I love this definition of of leadership and why we're even talking about this topic is because we can all do this thing called leadership, what you see on the screen there, the definition. This is from Ken Blanchard, who's written a lot of books. I put one of his more popular books on the screen there. But I love this definition because it's all something we can relate to. It's something we are all have different levels of strength at doing this thing that you see on the screen there. And it's not about your title or your position. We certainly hope people who have the title and position do this well. I'm sure we can all think of people from our own experiences, both present and previous, of people who don't do this very well or even horribly poorly. So my goal is to help us to do this better, to be able to have a more positive influence over others, to allow them to really break free of where they're stuck and to move and grow and expand their strengths so that they can feel more connected to the workplace. All right, here we go. So my hope is this in this brief time we have together that you see the value in what is this thing called workplace engagement and how do we become more engaged? And I think you'll see a few things in here that can be really, really helpful to you. I hope so anyway. All right. Gallup, who does a lot of work in the area of workplace engagement, has identified three main areas of engagement. People who are engaged, they are, you can read these various definitions, but they're connected, they're passionate, they give their all, they want to do well, they want to bring their best every day to the workplace. And so those are engaged. And if you've ever been engaged, you know what that feels like. It's exciting, it's thrilling, it feels special to you. You feel like you're really adding value. Okay. And sometimes when I'm with large groups or small groups, I'll say, well, what percent of the workforce do you think are engaged? What percent are disengaged? And you see what that definition is by Gallup, which is they basically checked out. They put in what they have to do, but they're not very excited about it. They're not thrilled about what they're doing, but they're clocking in, clocking out, doing what they got to do, but not a lot of excitement or passion in their day. Actively disengaged, we probably, unfortunately, all know people like this who it's not just about they're disconnected. They're trying to bring others along with them in that unhappiness. And that is just a draining environment to be around people like that. And so my hope is that I can help us, all of us in this room, to move ourselves towards being more engaged. Okay, I'm not saying all day, every day, but to be more engaged in our work. I don't know if this shocks you or not. When I first saw this back when I started focusing on this topic many, many years ago, and Gallup keeps updating it every couple of years of what percent of the US workforce is engaged. And you saw those definitions, okay? You saw those definitions. We just went over those. Only 30% are engaged, and that's most of the time. Okay. I'm not saying all the time, but most of the time they feel like if they were to put themselves in one of those categories of how they primarily feel and are, 30%. That means as you leave this webinar and go out and about in your workplace and look around and walk outside and go to the store or wherever, everybody who works for a living, 7 out of 10 of them aren't real thrilled about what they're doing and where they're doing it and who they're doing it for. 70%. That is a lot of people who really aren't in a good spot. It's not a good fit. And there's probably a million different reasons for that. So my hope is that you find one or two things you can do that's going to be helpful to you. I don't know if this is a shock to you, and this has really very little to do with pre or post or during COVID. It may even be going up now. I don't know. This was within the last year, Gallup surveyed U.S. employers and said, what percent of your employees are actively looking for another job? 51%. So more than half. And when I say active, I'm saying they're not just waiting, and if something better comes along, they'll take a look. They're trying to find something that's not what they're doing now. Okay. A lot of money. If you want to put money to it, a price tag on active disengagement, and I briefly explain what that is. Here's some of the ways that you lose money about that. I do a lot of work with healthcare providers, physicians and NPs and pharmacists and physical therapists. And I'll go into their office, their setting, and I'll say, how many of you have your patients, your customers, how many of them have other options other than you? And almost all of them say, well, yeah, they could go other places. Then I say, well, then other than you're really smart at what you're doing, which is, you kind of assume most places like that have really smart people. What is it that keeps them coming back? What is it that makes them tell others about that you're the place to go to, that you're where they should go to get their care? And a lot of it has to do with how they interact with each other on an hour-to-hour basis. I love walking into doctor's offices and just observing. I'm kind of glad to wait because then I can observe the staff and listen to how they interact with each other. And I can almost tell you within the first 30 seconds if they're an engaged workplace or a disengaged workplace. I just watch them and listen. So there's a lot of reasons people should be focusing on this. One is the money. All right. All of this says is if you're not in a role that doesn't match your strengths, the things that you do well, then giving you 10 or 20 cents more an hour is probably not going to make you more engaged, okay? And I can think of many, many examples of the people that I've worked with over the last many decades that would foot stomp this. Yeah, they paid me $1 more an hour, but it didn't, that thrill of the little extra money didn't last long, okay? It was still a fairly toxic workplace. All right. It's a little bit of a busy slide, but let me just explain it because I think it's important to take a peek at this. And that is, if you look at this, these three different circles, the kind of the lime green, the darker green color, that's percent of the workplace that is engaged. If on the far left, you have a supervisor who focuses primarily on your strengths, on the things that you do well, okay? Catches you in the act of doing something good and tells you about it and you feel good about that. Okay. Say when I say primarily, I don't mean every day, all day, but just they focus on what you do right, what you do well, and they highlight that and they appreciate it. The middle one is if they're primarily focused on your weaknesses, your negative things, catch you in the act of doing something wrong. You still see that there's what, 78% are, well, 22% are actively disengaged. So it's worse than the one on the left, but it's not as bad as the national average, or it's just not. 45% are engaged, the national average 30. If we look at the one on the far right, this is if you have a supervisor who ignores all of the things you do, the good stuff, the bad stuff, no feedback of any kind to anybody. They're just missing in action. You hear nothing from your supervisor, okay? And I often ask people, and I won't do it now because we don't have a whole lot of time for engagement here. Sad as that sounds, I don't have a ton of time to talk to you about why this is, but what I hear when I ask people, why do you think it's so much worse on the right? And what I hear is people saying, well, at least in the middle, they know you're alive. It doesn't feel so great to be constantly told what you're doing wrong. But if you're ever been in an environment like the one on the right, the people that are screwing up, coming in late, leaving early, not doing their job, there's no consequences. So they keep doing it and more people doing it. And it's probably no wonder that only 2% of the workplace that's like that on the far right, only 2% are engaged. Can you imagine being in a workplace where 97% of your coworkers don't want to be there or miserable? It's a horrible, horrible place to be. And I've been in places like each of these, and I would say, yeah, it's just like this. You just want to do more. All right. So there was a survey done a few years back of 15,000 people of why they stay. Okay. Not across all types of organizations, academia, military, government, for profit, not for profit, religious organizations, volunteer organizations, all sorts of. And they ask people, here's a whole long list of why you stay here. What is it about this place that keeps you coming back? And they did all their statistical magic, and these were the top 10 reasons in order of why they stay. Oftentimes when you leave an organization, you quit a job, if they have an HR department, they give you an exit survey and ask you questions about why you're leaving. And I always thought, well, that's a little late. You've already decided to leave, so okay. But this is asking people why they stay. All right, more of a positive spin. And these were the top 10 reasons in order. And the reason I underline number 4 and number 7 is because you really do, most organizations or leaders and managers, they don't have a lot of influence over the pay of their employees or the benefits of their employees. Once they're there, it's just, that's what you get. Now, the other 8, you do. And 1, 2, and 3 are 1, 2, and 3 by a lot. There's a huge break between number 3 and 4 and all the rest. And so I bring this to your attention because these 1, 2, and 3, those items, that's what engagement is all about, is understanding what makes people great. What are they looking for in their job? How do you help? And you don't have to be in a leadership role for this. You can ask each other this. What do you look for? What do you find exciting about coming here? Where do you want to be in 6 months, a year, 5 years? What are your goals, your hopes, your dreams with your job, with your career? Just having those conversations. And what is it about this place that just makes you want to be here? And what would make you want to be here even more? Okay. So we have control. Back to that basic definition. We have some influence over a lot of these things. And we don't have to wait till someday when we're in the top spot, when we can make some big decisions. We can help each other. We can have ourselves identify some of those things. So I'm going to speak to you in a minute about the Strengths Finder. It's an assessment. Yes, there's a fee. You have to pay to take it, but it's a very nominal fee. I want to say it's like $19. And I could ask you how many people have taken it. I'm sure some of you probably have. And I'll talk to this about the Strengths Finder assessment in a moment, because I think it's one of those that I find very valuable, and others have told me it's really helpful to take it and then to do something with it, which I'll get to in a minute. So if you're able to focus on your strengths on a regular basis in your job, you're 3 times more likely to report you have a good quality of life and 6 times more likely to be engaged. And being engaged is so vital. And if these are some of the outcomes of people who get to use their strengths, they're much more engaged. These are the kinds of positive things that happen if you get to not only identify what your strengths are, share them with others, and figure out ways of using them even more. All right. So I'm going to send you all these PowerPoints, by the way. You don't have them. I just didn't want you to have them in advance, but I did want to highlight some of the key things of why focusing on strengths helps us to be more engaged. It just does. So this is the book. You can get it. Do not buy this book used. If you buy it used, one of the real benefits of this little book on the Strengths Finder assessment is it comes with a sealed envelope in the back, and you open the seal and it gives you instructions on how you take the assessment. I think the book is 19 or 20 bucks. Do not buy it used, because if you buy it used, chances are someone else has used that assessment code and it's only good once. Okay, so buy it new. Or you can also go to Strengths Finder or just Google Strengths Finder assessment, because you can purchase the assessment without the book. The book is okay. I mean, it gives you some ideas, but really the assessment is the key. Plus, the things I'm going to share with you, and I have shared with you prior to this workshop, are some of the key things you need after you've taken the assessment. I'll tell you this now in case I forget later. When you take it, I'm going to assume for a minute all of you are going to take this assessment. You're going to fork over the $19 and take it. When you do take it, a couple things to note. One is it's a test that once you start it, you can't stop it. You can't pause. You can't think about it, put it on pause and think about it. Once you start the test, you have to finish it. Okay. So it takes about 20, 25 minutes. So you need to take it when you're in a quiet space, relaxed, and you're ready to take it. And then you also think about how you think you typically are, how you behave, how you act, and just answer it that way. Go with your gut thoughts on how you would respond to the particular statements, and pick the best one and move on. Okay. And almost everyone I've ever worked with using the Strengths Finder assessment has said it's a pretty doggone accurate assessment. All right. So that's the assessment that I would highly recommend you take. And then you can reflect on it. And then if you have questions about your results or anything, again, feel free to send me a note. We can talk about it. All right, that's enough of that. I told you this is going to be a bit of a sprint, but let me share with you this. Nicole, do you see 12 items here?
Yes.
Oh, good. I'm clicking the right buttons here. All right. So Gallup, who I've mentioned before, they do a lot of work in the area of engagement. This might be your one big thing that you do from today. Okay. And I can't think of anything that would be better. Maybe taking the strengths finder assessment would be a great step. Your one big thing that you do that you take away is you commit to taking that and then looking at your results and then sharing them with other people. But this is their engagement survey. And you see it's a five-point Likert type scale from strongly disagree to strongly agree. And if you look at these statements, I would ask you, how would you respond? You have all these, so you can fill it out now. So your one big thing might be to fill this out, maybe share it with someone at work who you value their input, and they take it, and then you talk about, is there anything you could work on that would be helpful to make you more engaged? Um, and I won't read all these to you. You can do these. Notice things like number 5, my supervisor or someone at work seems to care about me as a person. Okay, it doesn't have to be your supervisor, but someone seems to care about you. There's someone at work who encourages my development. And then the one that gives people the most pause, because I've used this for quite a while, is number 10. I've even asked the Gallup folks, really? Best friend? What is this, third grade, BFF? No, they say, we have done the research. We found people who work with someone they would consider their best friend, someone you could share private things with, your more intimate thoughts about your job and your career and things that you really are stressed about, and you know the information is safe and they can do that with you, and you really do look forward to working together. They say that's really important to be engaged. I'm not saying you have to run out and start finding you a best friend, but those places where you do have a best friend, those people that say yes to that or strongly agree, they're much more engaged. So, but anyway, these are those 12 items that Gallup, and this is why they're in different colors. Your basic needs, your individual needs, your team needs, and where do you hope to go in the future? All right, so that's something you have. That might be your one thing you do and think about and talk about. There's also a book that goes into great detail on each one of these 12 questions. And the name of the book is 12, the number 1, 2. Pretty simple, right? So you can look for that on Amazon or whatever, but it goes into a lot of detail on each of these. So if you struggle with, well, I rated myself really low on one or two of these, I'm not really sure what to do. Well, that's a great start, is to take a look at that book. I got a few other things I want to share with you. When you get your Strengths Finder, you will get your top 5. You see that in front of us, Nicole? Achiever.
Yes, you got it.
All right. So you will get 5 paragraphs. There are 34 strengths on the Strengths Finder. Okay. And if you've taken this before, your results are kept. You have to call. I'll send you a link on how to take the Strengths Finder assessment. I can send that to Nicole. She'll send it to everyone, because there's things that I mentioned already you may forget, but I'll reiterate them in some instructions on how to take the assessment. One of the main reasons I ask people to take the assessment is one of the best ways you can improve yourself is to know, where are you? Where are you in this? Where are you on how engaged you are? Where are you on how well, what are your strengths are? How do you share these? How do you use these? So let's just say one of your top 5 strengths out of the 34 that they assess, one of your top 5 is achiever. People who have a high level of achiever in them, they like to make lists, they have to-do lists, they check things off, they're driven, they get things done, they're really pushed to do that. The reason I highlighted a few, because what I would suggest you do when you take your Strengths Finder, when you get your results, is you sit down and with someone who knows you really well and go over these and highlight the things on your paragraphs that you would agree are spot on. That's me right there. That's just how I am, who I am, what I do. That's the way I feel. And they could, because they know you really well, they could sit down with the same paragraphs and they would highlight what they see in you. It's really powerful to have those conversations with the people. And then you talk about, well, how does that help us do our job? How does that help me to be more engaged, but to give more of myself. How do we use this more? How do I use my strength even more? Um, So you'll get your top five strengths, you would get your paragraphs, all that good stuff. Okay. You can also, you have this, which is a couple of sentences on each of your strengths. Okay. And this is all 34. You see those, Nicole? I'm scrolling through these.
Yes.
Okay. So you have that. I'm going to share with you two more things. One is this. So when you take the Strengths Finder, and I really don't make money on the strengths finder. I'm not like pushing something that I'm selling. Yeah, there's a fee to it, but I'm only telling you that because I want you to take it. I want you to take this. And if it's been within the last year that you've taken it, let's say it's more than a year, you took it, but you don't know where your results are, or they're somewhere. You can call the number that I'm gonna send you as far as the instructions, and they will look you up. They will find you and tell you the exact day you took it and what your top five were back then. That can be real interesting to think about because if, let's say, 5 years ago you were in, I don't know, undergrad, and now you're working and you're in charge of stuff and people and you're just using different strengths, different muscles, okay? Chances are your top five have changed, and that's pretty normal, pretty natural because you're doing something different. So you're going to be using different strengths. You're going to be using different talents that you have. They're going to kind of bubble up to the top. Doesn't mean those others that used to be there aren't there, just means they didn't make it to your top five. So this is a grid that has all 34 strengths. And you have it separated by four different domains, they call them, these colored columns. Executing people with strengths in this domain, they're good at getting things done, okay, getting things accomplished, achieving stuff. Influencing, they're good. People with strengths, they're good at bringing people along with you. Okay, pretty important when you're working in a workplace environment with teams. Relationships, how do people feel about where we are, where we're going, what's going on? Where are people as far as their feelings, their thoughts, and are they on board with this? Are they struggling? Are they stressed? People with strengths there can help with that. And then strategic thinking domain is all about where are we headed? Okay, well, it's all great and good, but where are we going? So as you see, here's an example of someone who had two strengths in influencing, two in relationship building, one in strategic thinking. It doesn't mean this person didn't have any in executing. It just means when they took the assessment, these were the results, and these are the five strengths that popped up. So the goal really, once you take this, is really to look at how do you use them more? Here's some questions that I don't know if I sent them, but if I didn't, I will. These are the questions you should ask yourself. What was your first reaction? Did you agree with it? Did you disagree with it? Any surprises in there? Have you shared your results with anyone? And that is one of the big things that people don't do that I've seen take this assessment. They read it, they go, yep, that's me. And then they put it on a shelf or throw it in the garbage and they never think about it anymore. And that's really unfortunate because you could really use these by sharing them with others, letting people in on who you are, how you are. Couple things. One, it can avoid some real conflicts later, some problems between, if it's like, why do you ask so many questions? Well, one of the reasons is that's part of who I am. That's what I do. And how do we use that strength to help our team? So having these conversations, these are just questions to start conversations around your strengths. And I'm hitting the strengths so hard because it's so directly tied to the more you can use your strengths. First, figure out what they are. This is a great way to do that. Share them with others, and then have a conversation with others about how can you bring more of that to the workplace every day, not just now and then, but every day. And the more you can do that, the more engaged you're going to be. All right. Like I said, it's a lot. I know it's a lot of information. The Q12 survey, powerful tool. These highlighted resources that I've shared with you can be helpful to you. Go back and listen to this PowerPoint again at some point. Feel free to fire me an email if you have questions about the Q12 or if you've taken your Strengths Finder and you're not sure what to do with it or anything like that. I'm here as a resource. Please use me if you think I could help add some value to that. So I normally can spend a half day or a day on all of this and dive really deep into this, but I knew with a half an hour, it was just going to be this sprint high level overview. So I hope there's some information in here that's helpful to you. And Nicole, we're at the planned end time. I have yet to look at a chat. Let's see. Anything in there I need to do?
There were just some good comments.
Okay.
Talia mentioned the OSU Leadership Center has some great professional development courses relating to strengths finders. And
Okay.
then
Good.
we had, yeah. And then we had one question asking, you kind of already answered it about if you take the survey over multiple years, will it change or does it stay consistent? Which you kind of
Um,
answered.
yeah, it may change. It may change significantly. It depends. If it's been 10 years, it probably did. Doesn't mean if it doesn't change any, which sometimes happens. You know, there's such strengths, such strong components of who you are. They pretty much stay the same. So that brings one more thought to mind, and I know we're in overtime here, but if you take it and you're struggling with, well, it depends. If I'm at work, this is how I would respond. If I'm away from work, this is how I would respond. I would say pick one, probably pick your workplace you and respond that way. Since we're kind of taking this on the workplace time here. But you pick. But a lot of people say it doesn't matter. I'm the same regardless of whether I'm at work or away from work. And then I say, okay, then it doesn't matter. Answer it honestly. So um, yeah, there's a lot of great resources out there. You could certainly YouTube some thoughts on the Strengths Finder, but one of the best things I would have you do is take it and then reflect on it. And then if you have questions, feel free to fire them at me or someone else who you value their input. Thanks for the time. I'm sorry it was such a rush, but I felt like I was speed talking the whole time, but there's a lot in here. Just reflect on it, think about it, the Q12, your Strengths Finder. Um, ask yourself those questions. All right. Nicole, anything else?
Nope, I just want to thank you, Scott, so much for your time and your expertise. Thank you to everybody who joined us today. And our last webinar of the series will be titled Spring into Health, and that will be on April 16th. So take care, and we will see you then, everyone. Bye.